20th of March. A Wednesday. Watch these planes come over the mountaintops. That was probably an Alaska Airlines flight, although it's not ferrying any passengers or freight from point to point. Well, the freight being it's cargo, and I'm not landscape mode, so I'm having focus issues. We went through it right through that cloudburst, and time after time along this lenticular shelf that's along the mountains, planes have come up and they're leaving little marks, tick, 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 watching how this whole etheric mess has come together. It isn't meteorological. It's creating a meteorological effect, but that's not what's driving the formation of the clouds. And so, see how this pops today. There's all kinds of waves coming into this to make it form. They're kind of in the trees, so it's inhibiting me to see it all. We'll have a look, see how this develops through the day.
A little closer, or were you even taking me?
I was. As a matter of fact, I just thought that'd be kind of a little segue in the shot from this unique Crestone experience to what I was doing was
the
mountains in the background and the chemtrails in the sky and all these effed up clouds. It's good. Can I touch?
Oh yeah, she's a lover.
On a winter coat on it too. You too, man. Take care. And that's where I live. And that's where I live. Chemtrails off the mountains, funky old wave clouds, and the world famous Crestone Free Box. First flight come on through, the lenticular, these little clouds, curling this way as the force of these waves comes along this, and they use these ticks to gauge how far they drift and how far they're shearing off the top of the bottom layer of these clouds. At the bottom of these clouds, we can see kind of like a striation as we see the layers separating with these spokes, these segments come up as these waves are literally just being driven along very aggressively on the top. Trail here, right atop that cloud, right over it, and then it continues. Another little chemtrail. You can see how he's split. You got the powders coming off to the north on this side. So he's just running the line. Again, back into these incredible lenticulars. A little more diffuse on the top than they were about an hour ago. The trails are still with us. We have a quick little shot. Still the lenticulars coming up on 3:30, and there's the chemtrails. What brought me outside was this loud, low-flying plane. Never was able to spot visually. This stuff probably in the way. Well, certainly so in the way. Whatever they're doing has warranted a lot of flights today. A lot of bloody flights. About 4:30 in the afternoon, just had a nice loud jet pass overhead. And all this haze left over from debris from the clouds out across the valley floor. We can see these clouds. And notice how they're just kind of hairy. They're lacking their definition. They're becoming more and more diffuse. Some disruptive resonance technology has been introduced into the sky to disturb the formation of these clouds, to keep them from holding together, to keep them from putting down moisture. This one has been left kind of untouched. And then off to the north, we're at the beginning of kind of a lenticular wave cloud, probably a standing wave cloud. You can only really tell those from time lapse. And then what had been the lenticular along the mountains has largely dissolved away. But nevertheless, we're just seeing an abundance of trails overhead today, and they continue to wreck these clouds, disturb them, disturb their formation. And in doing that, instead of letting them come through intact, we're left with a great reduction in sunshine. All right, everybody, coming up on the end of Wednesday, March 20, just after 10 p.m. local time. And what I've shown you today were a lot of clouds. A lot of clouds. I'm here. Grab the mouse here in southern Colorado. And so we're on the leading edge of a ridge. It should have been a pretty dry day, and typically it should have been pretty sunny. But we had this southern flow of moisture coming in from the warmer regions of the Pacific. And from the north, we had this nice little impulse pressing into the northern Rockies with the first wave of energy rolling through Idaho this morning and then into Wyoming and Montana. But still, I'm under the crest of the ridge. The east is cool and unsettled, strong northerly breeze, and so we've got these cold north winds. The center of the high pressure is somewhere in the middle of the states. We'll look at that in a second with the return flow along the Gulf, returning moisture into this inbound storm and also not quite into this inbound storm, but nevertheless the two will sort of come together. So anyway, I'm under this messy Pacific flow. And this next impulse will dig strongly from the northern Pacific into the central Rockies, and then this guy up off the coast of California, off northern Baja, will begin to amplify somewhat and will continue to send streams of high clouds in, which has largely precluded my ability to see pan-stars over the last week or so, and then the storm just digs strongly into the northern Rockies. So they're working the high pressure. I have stated and stated and stated again and again and again that they love working high pressures. It's the place where they seem to be most effective in their work. All right, to the water vapor imagery. There's our timestamp at the bottom, ending at 3:45 UTC, 9:45 Mountain, and over the day, this is the mess that I've been in. Here's the storm digging strongly in from the northern Pacific, with the low curling up, and there's almost two centers. There are two centers in here. And what I'm going to show you this evening are a lot of two centers. There's two holes. There's two pulses. I want to pop back to one of the last visible images I received this evening. And here's the state of Colorado. I'm here in the San Luis Valley, just about where this is. And what do we notice? We notice over the entirety of the valley that there's this zone bounded by this hole and this hole. There's a much larger one down in New Mexico, still with gridding across it, almost like we've got a skeleton shape. And then a very sharp edge, and then you can see some of the high clouds through, and I'm sure there was a ton of chemtrails through all this as well. Move over to the panhandle, and we find again two holes, with major impacts on the kinds of clouds downstreams from these holes. Here's another set of holes, or a couple of holes. Here's another few in eastern Colorado. Here's another series of them over about Goodland, Atwood, Kansas, and more. So all of these holes are artificially introduced into the atmosphere, and then downstream from these holes are these waveforms. So they're resonating in the atmosphere, and they need to get the chemtrails and these holes to show up in the right places so that they can then have the desired impact on the weather. And everywhere you look, it's a hole. It's a hole. It's just at every single scale, small scale, large scale, they're really working these holes. And from that, you can bend, you can shape, you can do so much with the clouds. And the water molecule has to conform to this energy, has to conform to this waveform that has been introduced into the sky. And this is just the visible imagery in the western U.S., even into Arizona. We have these holes. So I'll pop out of the wide image, let meteorology geeks out there get a timestamp. You'll be able to read that, or maybe not. They'll have to read it for you. I know what has to happen. I have to make it a little bigger than that. So we're 00Z UTC on 321. Just even out over the open Pacific. There's a chemtrail right here, a little track, and we're way out in the Pacific. I mean, California is way in here. I'm zoomed in down here, and we're still finding chemtrails. So I'm gonna iris down just a touch, so I'm not blowing out the whites. We get into these holes, and we find little jets squirting out. Little jets, usually a whole hole and a jet squirting out. So those of you that want to be looking at visible satellite imagery, and I use weathertap.com. It may cost me $8 a month, but it's worth every single penny. Every single penny. And then you can come in here and really begin to analyze this stuff that you will never in your life see on your local television. So what they're doing is using these chemtrails to create waveforms, to guide and align and set up waveforms in the atmosphere, thereby dictating who gets rain and who does not.